Hello, I made a breakfast soup this morning, but it didn't turn out as well as I'd hoped. It's rather thin and lacking in flavor. Could we try making it a bit thicker next time? However, we should be mindful of the salt content since my doctor has advised me to limit my intake, but honestly, I do enjoy bold tastes. Speaking of preferences, my mother-in-law, Brittany, is quite particular about her food. She likes it heavily seasoned, even though her health isn't the best. She's a bit overweight and on the verge of diabetes. Her doctor has warned her about her diet, but she doesn't seem concerned and often adds extra seasoning to the dishes I prepare. It's surprising how much salt and pepper she sprinkles on, regardless of the health-conscious spices I use. It never seems to satisfy her, and I'm genuinely worried about her health if she continues this way. It's challenging dealing with Brittany. She tends to be critical and difficult. My name is Diana, I'm 31 years old, and besides working, I manage our home. I've been married for 4 years and we don't have children. The issue is that I'm unable to have children and Brittany never lets me forget it. She often tells me that as a woman, my inability to bear children makes me less valuable and that I should be grateful just for being allowed in the house. We've tried many times and I've been through numerous treatments, but nothing has worked. It's both physically and emotionally draining, so I've decided to stop the treatments. They're costly, and continuing without any guarantee of success is difficult. My husband once mentioned that investing in fertility treatments felt pointless. This whole situation weighs heavily on me, especially when my husband echoes his mother's harsh words, agreeing that my inability to conceive somehow makes me less complete. Despite everything, I've always wanted a baby, but now I think it might be time to accept and find peace with our circumstances. Despite my husband urging me to conceive quickly, the pressure only added to my stress. I couldn't just get pregnant because it was expected of me, and after ceasing the fertility treatments, I contemplated finding joy just with my husband. However, my mother-in-law kept her hopes for a grandchild alive, often nudging me about it. She even went as far as buying diapers and flaunting them in front of me, proclaiming, "Look, I got diapers. You'll need them one day." In response, I quipped, "Aren't those a bit small for you, Brittany?" To which she replied excitedly, "These are for a baby, can't you see?" I retorted sarcastically, "Well, I wouldn't know. I'm the broken woman who can't have kids." That comment upset her and she stormed off to her room. I was relieved when she left, already exhausted from work and not in the mood to handle her harsh remarks. It seems her favorite pastime is making my life difficult. We moved in with my in-laws after my father-in-law passed away a year ago. It was a hard time for her, and around then, her doctor had also warned her about her risk of diabetes. We moved in to support her, but despite her condition, she's okay as long as she adheres to her medications and maintains a proper diet. Yet, she often neglects her meds and eats whatever she likes, risking her health further. Honestly, I dread the thought of being responsible for her care. I'm still in my 20s, working full-time, and it's already a lot handling everything. The following day, which was my day off, I was busy with household chores. Usually my mother-in-law spends her time lounging on the sofa with snacks, but unexpectedly, she got up and wandered into my room. I didn't want her in there. My hands were full, so I didn't object when my mother-in-law said she had cleaned my room. "Thanks," I replied, though I felt a twinge of suspicion. "You know, if you leave your room messy, you'll attract bugs," she joked. I managed a smile and said, "Sure, enjoy your clean room," still unsure about her true intentions. It seemed she took my response as gratitude, which only made her actions seem more dubious. I couldn't shake the feeling she was scheming something. That evening, I decided to sleep in my husband's room. He had been away on business since the previous day and wouldn't be back soon. Even if he found out, I knew he wouldn't mind. We usually slept in separate rooms because of my nursing job, which has regular hours and occasional night shifts. Our relationship had also grown a bit distant, but mainly, I didn't want to disturb him with my coming and going at odd hours. After ensuring my mother-in-law had retired to her room, I slipped into my husband's room, thinking, she's in her room, now I can finally get some rest. I ended up spending 3 nights there. My mother-in-law, however, started to grow suspicious of my upbeat demeanor. She began asking odd questions. "Are you sure you're not feeling any discomfort or anything?" she inquired one day. I dodged her gaze and responded, "What do you mean?" She dropped the subject abruptly, but it was clear she was pondering something. Later that day, as she ate her meal alone, I prepared to relax at home before my night shift. Relaxing, however, isn't much of an option with my mother-in-law around. She seldom assists with any household chores and prefers to direct me on what to do, making it hard to truly unwind. While my mother-in-law lounged on the couch, munching on snacks and absorbed in her manga aimed at women, I couldn't help but suspect she was plotting her next move to rile me up. I glanced at the comic's cover. It was titled, "Epic Mother and Daughter-in-Law Swamp Battle." I rolled my eyes at her dramatic choice of reading material. My husband finally returned from his business trip, arriving home late at around 9 p.m., looking utterly exhausted. "I'm going to take a bath," he declared. "Sure, I'll heat it for you. Have a beer while you wait," I suggested. He was about to agree, but then I added, "Actually, it's not safe to drink alcohol before a bath." He sighed and opted for a non-alcoholic beer instead, following my caution about the risks of mixing alcohol with hot water. I thought it was common sense, especially since even saunas have signs warning against entering while intoxicated, but it seems common sense isn't so common in my household. After his bath, my husband started singing loudly. We live in a single-family home, but with it being late, I worried about the neighbors. "Hey, you're too loud," I called out. "Shut it. You're the one being loud," he shot back. I quietly urged him to stop, but then my mother-in-law intervened, walking into the bathroom area to defend him. "What's wrong with that?" she challenged. "You don't know how to treat your husband, do you? Always so inconsiderate and complaining," she scolded me. "I'm not the one always complaining, Brittany," I retorted. "You're definitely not cute, not that you're a beauty to begin with," she sneered back. I shrugged it off, replying, "That's okay with me. I probably look like a knockout beauty in some other country. No worries." Afterward, my husband finished his bath and started drinking. It was already 9:40 p.m., and I needed to head out for my shift at the hospital. Even though it was close by, there was a lot to prepare for a busy night ahead. As I prepared to leave for work a bit early, I mentioned to my husband, "By the way, I've been sleeping in your room. Would you mind using mine tonight? My clothes are scattered everywhere." He casually responded, "Sure, it doesn't matter to me." "Okay, I'm heading out then. Take care," I whispered to him, trying to keep my voice low so Brittany wouldn't overhear. Just as I reached for my bag to leave, I heard my husband let out a loud groan. I turned around to see him curled up on the floor, clutching his leg and groaning in pain. His face contorted with agony, and Brittany's face went pale as she started to panic. "What's happening? Speak!" she demanded, but he was too pained to respond. I felt a rush of adrenaline, knowing I needed to act fast, but then I noticed something odd. The floor was unusually slippery. Even in my socks, I felt like I could easily slip. "What on earth is this?" I exclaimed, looking at both my husband and Brittany. "Brittany, what did you do?" "I didn't do anything. It's not my fault," Brittany protested quickly. Realizing that blaming anyone at that moment wouldn't help, I immediately called for an ambulance. My husband was taken straight to the hospital where I work, and suddenly, work became the last thing on my mind. At the hospital, he continued to clutch his leg, sweating and writhing in pain. "It hurts so bad. Hang in there, please," I pleaded, watching him suffer. Thankfully, a doctor quickly examined him and managed to relieve some of our fears. His leg was indeed broken, a 5th metatarsal fracture, just as we suspected after he slipped on that slick floor. His foot was visibly swollen, a typical symptom of this kind of fracture, usually caused by tripping or putting too much weight on the foot. Speaking from personal experience, I recalled my similar injury. Years ago, I had twisted my ankle falling down the stairs. I was lost in my music, not paying attention, and heard a loud snap followed by intense pain. I, too, was diagnosed with a 5th metatarsal fracture. It was quite an embarrassing memory, but it came flooding back as I saw my husband in a similar kind of distress. I ended up lying to my close friends about my husband's injury because he didn't need to stay at the hospital after his fracture was confirmed. He could come home. On that day, I was scheduled for a night shift, but my nursing supervisor insisted I take the night off. The injury wasn't life-threatening, but she seemed genuinely concerned for us. Later, while resting, my husband remarked, "I survived, but now I've got a fever." I replied, "Well, you did break your leg, so a fever isn't too surprising, but I'm wondering why the floor was so slippery. Maybe we should ask Brittany about that." Curious and a bit wary, I approached Brittany. "Hey, what did you do to the floor in the room?" Her response startled me. "Well, the floor was slippery because I slipped and fell. I could have seriously hurt myself," my husband interjected. Brittany then shockingly admitted, "That room is meant for my daughter-in-law, so I greased the floor. I was hoping she would slip, so I put a lot of grease on the floor. I never expected you to go in there and slip." I was flabbergasted. "Unbelievable!" I exclaimed. It turns out my mother-in-law had intentionally greased the floor, hoping I would fall. Although she claimed to have cleaned the room, her actual intention was to harm me. I was furious. If I had entered that room, I could have been seriously injured. Breaking a leg would be the least of my worries. Hitting my head could have been fatal. My mother-in-law's actions were practically criminal. "You're despicable. You're not even family to me anymore. I got seriously hurt because of you. I'm going to the police," I declared. In a desperate attempt to deflect blame, Brittany retorted, "Wait a minute, I didn't directly cause any harm, did I? Your wife is the one to blame. She told you to enter her room, didn't she? So this is all her fault." "Shut up, that's not the point. You're getting arrested," my husband said as he furiously dialed the police. In a frantic attempt to prevent him from calling, my mother-in-law tried to snatch the phone away. Despite the chaos unfolding around him and a broken leg, my husband clung to his phone, speaking urgently with the police. I found myself wishing I were anywhere but here, perhaps at work or even in a hospital, instead of entangled in this distressing situation. I knew it wouldn't be long before our neighbors heard about the ordeal, particularly since I was nearly injured as well. I considered involving the police myself. It was uncertain, but she might face charges of attempted assault. Yet, as I voiced this idea, Brittany protested, "Wait, now I don't want to involve the police." "Really? You knew what could happen when you chose this path. Did you think you could erase me from existence?" I retorted sharply. "I did hope it would be simpler if he just vanished," Brittany admitted, shockingly indifferent. "Wow, that's appalling. You're downright criminal in your thinking. Personally, I wish they'd lock you away forever," sneered N. "That's it. Let's get a divorce," I declared resolutely. "What? I can't continue living this way. If I stay, it might put my life at risk someday. Your moral compass is so skewed, I can't bear it any longer," I explained. "Wait, please, let's not end our marriage over this," my husband implored. "After you've demeaned and insulted me, do you even understand how much that hurt?" I replied. "I don't need you. I'm quite capable on my own," I asserted confidently. "No, I need you. I was counting on your income. I even went ahead and signed a contract for the Honda Century I've always wanted from Japan," my husband protested. "I don't care about that anymore," I said with resolve. I cleaned the grimy floor and quickly gathered my belongings. Stuffing essentials into my carry-on, I removed my wedding ring, set it on the table, and began searching through a shelf full of dishes for the divorce papers. "Ah, found them. The divorce papers you wrote up before. Remember? You said if I couldn't have a child within 3 years, we'd divorce." "Well, thanks. I can't have children now," I concluded, sealing my decision as I prepared to leave the turmoil behind. Holding the divorce papers firmly in my hand, I declared, "So, let's divorce." I added, feeling a mix of relief and resolve. "You must feel relieved now." "What about the loan for my Century?" my husband asked, referring to his cherished car. "Who cares?" I replied dismissively. I left the house and headed straight to the hospital. The compassionate charge nurse didn't need to ask many questions. She seemed to understand that I had my reasons. Being a nurse, I knew I could support myself without relying on a husband. I wondered why I had tolerated poor treatment and mean comments from my in-laws for so long. The entire situation seemed absurd, so I decided to focus solely on my job and put the past behind me. The next morning, I officially filed for divorce and he became my ex-husband. Given the emotional turmoil he caused, I consulted a lawyer about seeking compensation. In the end, my ex-husband was ordered to pay me, and I couldn't help but think, serves you right. Since the police got involved, the neighbors started avoiding my mother-in-law. She had openly discussed why my ex-husband had broken his bone, casting her in a negative light. Everyone now saw her as a terrible parent. Eventually, my ex-husband distanced himself from her and seemingly kicked her out. Though there was a survivor's benefit program, it didn't pay much. She lamented that living alone was impossible. Given her love for food, our previous grocery bills had been exorbitant, so adjusting to a modest lifestyle on just the survivor's benefit was challenging for her. As for my ex-husband, I lost interest in whatever happened to him. He had mentioned taking out a car loan, but I assumed he wouldn't be able to afford it on his salary. He had taken me for granted, expecting me to contribute financially, which had been a significant annoyance. Despite not being particularly affluent, he was the type to make impulsive purchases like a new car. Later, I started dating a doctor from the hospital. 3 years after that, we got married and were blessed with a child, which felt like a miracle after everything I had been through. From now on, I'm committed to doing my best for my family, cherishing each moment and the new beginnings we've created together.